Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest and greatest episode of Failing Up. Today, I'm sitting with Brett Goldstein, who's the founder of Micro. Micro is an all-in-one platform that sits on top of email that organizes itself. He also co-founded Launch House, which is a venture capital firm. In this episode, we talk about everything across the board from AI, robotics, the future of interactions between humans and robots, and should we automate death, along with life advice, meditation, and human consciousness, as well as peacocks in Sprezzatura, which is going to be the word of the day that you will hear more about in this episode. And I hope you love it as much as I do. Brett, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you here.
Nice.
Okay, so you gave me a lot of things to talk about. First of all, I want to dive into paradigm shifts. What is it that fascinates you about paradigm shifts, and what is the paradigm shift we are experiencing right now?
So I guess going back, I've always been interested in kind of strategy and like higher level thinking. I don't know, when I was younger, I would write a lot on the internet and write these like big long essays and all that stuff. And paradigm shifts are interesting because it's almost the water that surrounds us that nobody really is conscious of all the time. Mm-hmm. People are always uncertain around, okay, what happens in a world where there's AI everywhere? And there's a lot of power in being able to deeply understand that and describe that. And something I kind of have realized in observing paradigm shifts, granted, I like started tech in like post-mobile boom. And so really AI is the first massive paradigm shift that I'm going through, that they're predictable. There's like a pattern that happens with paradigm shifts. And obviously AI is the big paradigm shift we're going through right now.
But what's that pattern?
The pattern is that there are different phases. So there's usually the big phase I am interested in is the skeuomorphic phase, mm-hmm. or the translation phase. But basically the idea is that when a paradigm shift so dramatic, and by the way, there are different types of paradigm shifts. There's a regulatory shift. Hey, crypto's legal now. There's like, or marijuana is legal or whatever. There's cultural shifts like COVID, everybody thought was like this massive cultural shift away from in-person work towards remote work and stuff. And then there's technological shifts, which are usually the most powerful because they drive the other two. So AI is this big technological shift. And what will usually happen is the way that people interact with the things that they usually interact with just dramatically changes. So if you remember, my favorite example is the transition to mobile. So the very first iPhone, early iPhone, if you look at the apps on the iPhone, the way they're designed, they use skeuomorphic design. This is in the design community, they'll use the word skeuomorphic. And that's like the bookshelf app. If you remember that app, it was like where your books were, and it literally looked like a bookshelf.
Yeah.
The contacts app had like a leathery, funky.
It's like a contact book.
Yeah. And so the idea is like, why the hell did they do that? It's so cringe. Like they could have, and they switched to this beautiful flat design literally 2-3 years later. Mm-hmm. And my theory is that like Apple's genius is actually managing these paradigm shifts. So the reason they did that is because the contact binder or the other stuff reminded people of the thing that they use in the old world, mm-hmm. the old paradigm. The old paradigm is I read books from my bookshelf. What is this phone? Oh, I see my bookshelf on the phone. Now I know what that is. Now I know how to use that. And then I can transition. And then once I'm using it, reading books on my phone enough, I don't need that old skeuomorphic design. We can move to flat design. So this is literally what happened in mobile where they basically ditched skeuomorphic design literally 3 years later. What's interesting is a lot of the biggest companies in mobile were started about 3 years after the iPhone started out. So there's this kind of like magic 3-year number, it seems. Mm-hmm. So this is important for when you're building products for this new AI world. I see a lot of people who are thinking about like, oh, let's reimagine the interface of this, or like, we're building an email client. So what if you didn't have an inbox? With AI, you don't need an inbox. And the reality is, yes, maybe the inbox is not the most useful interface, but you need this phase of skeuomorphism where it looks like Gmail. It looks like the old thing. And then when you transfer users to the new thing, you can get rid of the old design. And actually, there's a really interesting pattern if you think about the most successful productivity apps or most successful products. Documents is my favorite example. They all were very skeuomorphic to the previous one. So we started out with physical paper, and then Microsoft Word came out, and it was literally like a piece of paper on your computer.
Yeah.
And then Google Docs came out, and it was like, oh, it's Microsoft Word in the cloud. And then Notion came out, and it was like, it's Microsoft Word, but with some cool Markdown stuff. And so the idea is like, if you want to build the next Notion, you want to build the next document product, it's got to look like Notion. It's got to look like the previous version. It has to be skeuomorphic.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
So you also said the way that we define a human gets smaller and smaller as technology advances.
Yes.
When referring to, I think it was AI.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about what you meant by that?
Yeah. So there's the most underrated AI and popular science book of all time, I think, is this book, The Most Human, by Brian Christian. And he basically participates in this competition called the Loebner Prize, which is a Turing test competition. But the idea is there are a bunch of judges sitting behind computers, and they're chatting with either a chatbot or a person they don't know. And there's an award for the best chatbot. This is way before ChatGPT. This is like 2012, 2009 actually, way earlier. So they would try to guess, is this a human or is this a chatbot? Chatbots win the best chatbot prize. The humans also win the most human prize. So the most human. So he basically goes around doing all this research, true story, trying to figure out how to come off as more human. Mm-hmm. And something he discovers along the way is that the way people define what a human is or what a human can do that's different from machines has changed over the years. So we used to say humans are different from machines and monkeys because we can do arithmetic and machines and monkeys can't. Well, then the calculator came out. Well, oh crap. Humans can't do arithmetic as good as a calculator. Okay, so now we used to be talking about creativity. Literally like 6-9 months ago, it was like, okay, AI is smart, could do all this stuff, but the reality is it actually isn't creative. And if you notice, a lot of that conversation is just totally dissipated.
Yeah, because it's gotten super creative. I think there's every idea that someone has, or I think that someone presents, I just automatically assume it's been influenced in some way by ChatGPT. Like everything is run through ChatGPT. You literally have an idea, you put it into ChatGPT and say like, okay, just solidify this for me. And it comes up with 10 other ideas and you're like, this is great.
Yeah, and you can tell because you're like, wow, this is too good to be just you. You know what I mean?
And you're like, and you also did this too fast.
Yeah. So the idea is like now AI is so creative that people are like, well, maybe creativity isn't necessarily what makes us human, makes us different from machines and other things. And so, I mean, broadly, I think people are constantly trying to define what's different about themselves than others. And my guess is what's going to happen is you're basically going to get rid of everything. No creativity, no arithmetic, no.
And you said no critical thinking.
No critical thinking. Yeah, I mean, I outsourced a lot of my critical thinking to ChatGPT already. So what that leaves is basically, I'm just a conscious thing having a conscious experience, and so
is that a good thing? Is that gonna I feel like my concern, or I don't even know it's concern, but it's the questions that I have. It's like gonna remove a lot of our like robotics and AI. I think is removing some of our ability to suffer. It's like the intense problem solving, critical thinking. Or like the mental turmoil that comes with having to figure something out. Yeah. Like, I don't think people are going to experience that anymore. Yeah. It's a math problem. If it's a creative problem, presentation, something that takes too long, like that's just going to be automated. Yeah. So what does that mean for us? How are we going to develop mentally? I mean, it's kind of interesting because if you've been off the grid recently, and you'll have no phone, you're like, okay, I'm just going to go tweaking. I tweak. Yeah. I literally am like, well, but there's this kind of like refreshing piece of it where you're like, oh, I'm going to go on a hike without my phone. I don't know where I'm going. And you're exercising this part of your brain you haven't exercised in a while. Yeah. But I think like
I think largely a lot of the agony around what if humans lose critical thinking? What if we can't do math? What if we can't write anymore is a little overblown, because the reality is nobody remembers phone numbers anymore. Like,
That's so true. We used to have to write it in a phone book.
Yeah, or just remember it. Like,
or addresses.
I used to remember tons of phone numbers, but now I don't. And I'm not mad about it. I don't, I still pull out my phone when I'm walking around the city with Google Maps. Not mad about it. And I think the same thing will happen with these other things. And it's just a function of like understanding what's an actual just evolution of, humans, and like outsourcing compute to other things, which by the way, we do already, because if you're in a relationship, your partner knows all the finance information, you may know all the information about your friends. Mm-hmm. So yeah, overall, not super worried.
But okay, in 20 years down the line where everything's been automated to death and we are just thinking beings, like just conscious beings.
Yeah.
What is that? I guess, what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? What do you think the world looks like in 20 years? And I think honestly, the part that is interesting is like in iRobots, you had robots that turned evil based on like some sort of hack they turned against their human owners. And you have, I think, 1X, you have Unitree, like a bunch of these robotics companies that are coming out with humanoids that actually look legit. I mean, their dexterity is really bad, but I feel like they're making a lot of progress. What is it, if we don't have to do anything ever, like what are we contributing to society?
We will find stuff to do for sure. People will figure stuff out. You say some kids at like a summer camp, they form these little pods and do stuff,
Yeah, and I think that was actually the case with the internet age and so many different phases of innovation that we went through, is like the people shifted towards something else.
Yeah.
But I feel like everything from all angles is just being automated.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the robots are going to control the robots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think one very beautiful thing that I think will happen related to the erosion of the human identity is that people will rediscover what being a conscious being means.
Yeah.
The Buddhists understood this. The ancient Jews understood this. Every ancient religion kind of points back to this idea of universal consciousness and the conscious experience being this very special thing. And when everything is eroded and you have a ton of free time, you start thinking, wow, it's pretty crazy that I exist and like I have this first person experience. And so, with I forgot who said it. It was like, I'm totally going to misquote it. It was Sam Altman said something about how after the printing press or some massive technological advancement, there was like the Enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So after every massive technological change, there's usually a spiritual revolution.
And what happened after the printing press?
I'm maybe totally misquoting, but there was a spiritual enlightenment. There was a awakening. There were people who were going to church more, who were reading the Bible, who were doing, thinking about these deeper things than they were before, because they were suddenly not having to, they had access to more information. They had other things like that. So I think the same thing will happen to AI, both post AI, both because great, now you can chat with the Bible. Now you can like explore your own. You can
literally talk to Jesus.
Yeah, you can talk to Jesus. Yeah. But I think it really just comes down to the fact that, people question a lot about who they are and find out.
Are you more so excited about the future, or do you have any concerns?
I don't have any concerns. I think I'm like a long-term bull.
Okay, I agree. But also, I was doing research on humanoids, and like, what if I saw somewhere, it was like, should we really be capable of automating death? If there's a humanoid robot that's on the battlefield, I mean, you could argue on one end that they're not even going to be humans on the battlefield in the future, and it's all going to be like a tech robot war. But if there are, like, in making humans smaller, don't we just? I feel like there's this huge gray area that could happen in terms of like lack of safety.
Yeah.
Whose fault would it be if there was like friendly fire and there was a hack and like the robot? And I feel like it's all pretty valid to think.
Way more cybersecurity issues when humans are not on the battlefield and robots are on the battlefield.
So I guess that's actually just like a different kind of error.
Yeah.
Normally it's human errors, and this time it's going to be robot errors.
Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting flip side of this, or other argument, is that like there may be more war if you don't have to sacrifice humans to go to war, right? Like the reason that people don't go to war is because their sons and daughters are going to be sent to war.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, okay, if we don't have to send our sons and daughters, just send the robots, maybe there'll be more war. That's
actually a good point. And then how would victory be defined if there's no, because a lot of the times the reason why the wars end is because of civilian casualties.
Yeah.
And also people in the public lose like the support of that war.
Yeah.
After Hiroshima, Okinawa, Hiroshima, oh my gosh. Nagasaki. After they experienced the bombs, like a large part of the reason why the war ended was because of the civilian casualties.
Yeah.
So what does that look like when there are none?
Maybe.
And I don't know. And how would we even be affected by that battle?
Yeah.
If there's no humans being involved.
Maybe infinite war. I don't know. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Sound great. Yeah. New York subway needs a lot more robots to keep security though. So I'd be pro robots.
I'm very pro robots. I'm very pro robots, but I think my only concern is that we are evolving a lot faster than we can, like our security can keep up with.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think like if, for example, we have 1X that their robot is able to be hacked hypothetically, and then like China or some other foreign country launches a huge cyber attack. Like how are we going to be able to manage that if they're burning the house down, if they're like throwing kids off balconies?
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that because I was like, I'll probably buy my mom one of these at some point, but like nobody wants to buy the first version.
Yes.
Don't buy the first version.
Yes.
It's going to be hacked. It's going to be not so great.
And did you hear about there is a, I don't want to quote that it was Unitree, but it was a robotics company based in China that had a backdoor that was left that allowed the robot dog that had like a live camera feed. And there was like some sort of vulnerability that let it be hacked into, and you could watch like the live stream of someone's house from all over the world.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then the U.S. intelligence claimed that it was intentional.
Really?
But they were like, no.
These are not my favorite thoughts.
No, I know, but I'm saying it's happening. And I feel like, no, at first, because when I was doing the research, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This is so cool. And then I was looking at all of the potential vulnerabilities, the different kinds of attacks that could happen. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's scary. I mean, the other kind of related topic of this is like these robots are getting so human-like that I think they'll be more convincingly human in certain ways than fellow humans. It's a little more obvious on the AI side of things because 2 years ago, you definitely would have known something's in AI with kind of like voice AI and like LLM advancement. It's like, all right, it's pretty convincing now. A couple of years, it'll be even more convincing. And then you're like, hey, this like girl or guy I've been talking to, is not as interesting as ChatGPT, or they're not as good a boyfriend or girlfriend as ChatGPT. And then then humans are in trouble. Like violence aside from robots, like, if the robots are stealing our significant others, then we have a problem.
But that's going to happen
at
some point because they already have, I think it's like, I want to say like porn robots, I think exist already, but it's more of like VR and also a combination of a robot. There's like multiple features.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's going to be some person that produces like a very human woman-like robot with feminine features and all those things.
For sure. There's probably conventions about it.
And that partnered with the epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's an interesting thing here where I find it very, very not surprising, but like interesting that right when we have this loneliness epidemic, right when we have this population crisis, artificial intelligence and robots are suddenly becoming a thing, right? Right?
But is it because, do you think it's that we're ready to accept it? Has there been like more of a, in your opinion, a societal shift?
Well, we need it now. This is, I think, the it's basically a miracle, because let's pretend, we were 20 years behind and having the population crisis 20 years ago.
We'd be cooked.
We'd be totally cooked, right? But now we're like, okay, the factories can be staffed by robots now.
Yeah. And in Japan,
yeah.
like a large part of the, not large part, but I think like a decent percentage of elderly homes and all those things are being staffed with robots.
Yeah, and they have the bunch of vending machines all over the country.
Yeah, and I think we're going to experience like a 75 to 85 million person labor shortage by 2030, according to McKinsey. Like some big fat number.
Yeah, I just think it's a very unique coincidence that this stuff seems to be happening around the same time, which,
Is there like a conspiracy to that?
I think if you're
it's
a
getting so
churchgoer,
much
you would have some thoughts.
Yeah, but it's also that it feels like it's getting so much attention now. Like there were robot. There was I think, I don't know how you say it, but it was Wabot 1.
Yeah,
it was like the first humanoid robot.
There was,
it was like the 1970s or something.
Boston Dynamics has been around a long time. But,
but why had I never heard of Boston Dynamics up until like 3 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the tech works now. That's the crazy thing. That's why.
I think you could argue the same thing with AI. It's like it didn't work before, and now that me as like a normal consumer that's not technical can interface with this sort of software, it makes it very popular. Yeah, and it makes it, I don't know, makes it go viral. And if anything goes viral, it's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it solves problems, so it's for sure gonna go viral.
We're so cooked.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about the word of the day.
Ooh.
Sprezzatura.
Sprezzatura.
Is it
Sprezzatura.
Sprezzatura. Is that how you say it?
You have to say it like this.
So it's Italiano.
Sprezzatura.
Okay, very nice. I think, that was Borat. Okay. So that means coming off like you're trying not that hard, right? You're not trying that hard. So you said the larger distance you have from some sort of necessity, carelessness you have, the more carelessness you have about your life. Yeah. You also said this is true with nature and peacocks. Yeah. How so? Okay. And how can you apply this to the startup world? I'm so curious.
This is when I'm obsessed with these things. I'm obsessed with these kind of patterns in the world. Mm-hmm. Like we dipped into it a little bit with like some of the hyper-reality-ish stuff. Sprezzatura is one of them, and it's a pattern that Sprezzatura. It is. I hate these people who they perfect English, and then one word is a French accent or an Italian accent.
Oh my god, I totally do that. I speak French, and I'm so annoying.
Really, I hate that.
Yeah, no, because it's
croissant. Like you're in America. Let's say croissant.
No, I used to say that, and people were like, "Yeah, we get it. You speak French."
Get it.
So annoying. Or like people go Barcelona. It's Barcelona.
No, you went to Ibiza once.
Okay. Yeah. Topic at hand.
Okay, so Sprezzatura is a pattern that exists on the physical level, on the ecological level, the societal level, cultural level. This is why it's really, really cool. So Sprezzatura is the act of coming off like you're not trying that hard. Pretty straightforward stuff. The definition of cool. If you look up cool in the dictionary, it's like nonchalant, like easygoing, casual,
no
so
quadruple
demure.
Texting. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So in dating, we all know it's like you don't quadruple text. Yeah. You can't say I love you on the second date.
It's called the ID gaff wars. You know what I mean?
ID gaff. We also know it in like beauty. I woke up like this, right?
Yeah.
I woke up. What is it?
Clean girl aesthetic. Clean girl makeup.
Yeah. Well, it looks. Yeah. It's like I don't want to look like I'm wearing a lot of makeup. Yeah. I want to look like I woke up with this, but I want to look good. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting is that is based on this idea is that the more resources you have, the more of something you have, the less you have to optimize for it. So the more naturally beautiful you are, the less makeup you have to wear. Right? The less you have to put into your situation in the morning. Mm-hmm. The more money you have, the more free you can be with your money. You can pick up the tab and all that stuff.
You don't think about it.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about it.
So peacocks. Peacocks are interesting. The male peacock has this massive, massive tail. And as we know, there's this law of natural selection, which means that animals adapt for survival. Well, this tail is really not very adaptive for survival because like a lion or something could just come along and grab the tail and eat the peacock. So why do they have it? It's sexual selection. Sexual selection is like animals adapt things that are appealing to the other, to the potential mate. So why is the tail appealing to a mate? Well, what it does is it signifies distance from necessity around survival. It means that the peacock is so strong or smart that it can wave this crazy tail around and no predator is going to kill it, or no predator has killed it yet. So this is why, like, the larger the tail, like female peacocks love big tails, you know what I mean? So the larger the tail, the more potential mates a male peacock would have, because the female peacock is saying, wow, this tail is so big, it is so clunky, predators must be after this guy, but he's alive, so he must be able to afford it.
And he must be strong.
Right.
And how do you think that applies to like the human experience and human dating? How do we do that?
Great example is depreciating assets. So you see these guys wearing super fancy sneakers. Well, the more you wear your sneakers, the less value they have. Or driving fancy cars, or having a giant purple Lamborghini or something crazy like that. What you're basically signaling with that is, I have so many resources that I don't have to optimize my shoe situation.
Oh, interesting.
I have such a large distance from necessity, financial necessity, that I have a bunch of shoes, and guess what? I wear them. Oh, I have a purple Lamborghini because this is my fourth car. I don't need to like have a super functional minivan or something like that. So that's how it relates to dating, but there's kind of like a fundamental physics type or ecological part of it. So life as we know it on Earth started through the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian explosion was when there's a massive abundance of oxygen in the atmosphere. I forgot what the reason was, but tons of oxygen. And then if you look at a graph of biodiversity, which is like the number of different species, it also exploded, right? And these are just wild different species. So basically what happens when there's a massive abundance of resources, the amount of stuff you can try, the amount of stuff you could do massively expands. So all these new organisms came into existence. And then when the oxygen ran out, what happened is only the most adapted organisms survived. So the ones that were not optimized to that resource, who had a wider kind of distance from necessity, did not survive. And so you see this in startups as well, which is like, when there's a ton of capital in a market or the whole market, you see a ton of stuff funded that just doesn't make sense, or the founders are spending money on stuff that like doesn't make sense. They're hiring giant teams, pre-product market fit and all that stuff. So the idea is that like whenever there's, and again, to bring it back to, the individual human level, look, when you have a ton of money, you're spending it on a bunch of random stuff, right? When you don't have a lot of money, you're only buying the things you need. This is also why they say in startups, you shouldn't raise a ton of capital, because you're going to spend the capital and you're not going to spend it wisely. You're not going to spend your time wisely. But when you have less capital, a lower distance from necessity, you're more optimized. See what I mean? So
you want to be lower distance to necessity, not higher, which is why you don't want to raise so much money, because then you're not going to go around spending it something's.
I mean, ideally you have in startups, ideally you have the distance from necessity, but you act as if you have a low distance from necessity. But what's interesting is, when you are, in fundraising, for example, you want to be Sprezzatura, because what's the necessity is the capital and the fundraising, right? Yeah. So one of the number one sound bites they tell you to say is like, we don't need the capital.
Yes. And that's when they get all the term sheets, because everyone, it's like everyone wants you but can't have you.
Yeah. So
I feel like if you make I feel like it's across the board. If you make yourself accessible to everyone, too available in dating, it's viewed as like, oh, what's wrong with them,
Yeah, and especially if you're trying really hard. If you're like, hey, I put this crazy, financial model together. You're showing up at the, hey, I heard you were going to be at this event, so I'm going to show up and like pitch you at this event. Doesn't work, right? even if the company is exactly the same, the founder background is exactly the same, that behavior is like literally the difference between a giant fundraise and no fundraise.
So in your experience, because you are in the midst of fundraising,
A little bit.
Yeah. How are you applying that to your fundraising process? And you've also been on the investor side.
Yeah.
So
Well, the Sprezzatura thing to say is that I'm not optimizing anything about my fundraise. but of course, like, you know what I mean? But of course, basically, everyone knows these tricks and stuff like that. So it's, yeah, I mean, when I was, running.
I don't know these tricks.
Well, when I was running Launch House, an accelerator that we had in LA and New York, one of the things that I recommended was using a memo and not a deck. Mm-hmm. And the memo is really important because a memo is something you could just whip out. A deck feels more like there's more time that you put into it, and you wind up putting more time into it because you want to make it beautiful. You want to make it look good. And the more overly designed a deck is, the more it signals not Sprezzatura. Right? So what Sprezzatura is a very minimalist memo. You pass it over and said, hey, didn't have much time to pull this together. The conversation's been happening so fast, but hope this helps. You know what I mean?
It. That's like, I'm so busy. I'm so booked and busy and in high demand.
Yeah. But qualitatively, like a lot of investors I talk to say they're seeing a lot more memos in general lately, just because I think they're also just easier to write than a deck.
Yeah. So speaking of investing and founding companies, Micro, I think, first of all, I'd love to hear more about Micro, but I also think it was very interesting because you said that a lot of these like productivity platforms earlier that claim to get your inbox to zero really don't actually get your inbox to zero. And it feels like you yourself, when you started Micro, have changed how you perceive email. Like I view, and I think everyone, Colin, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but like I think everyone in the world views email as like some big clunky communication thing that we just have to do. It's like an obligation and a necessity. But you said you view it as something else. So I'd love to understand what.
Yeah. So I guess the backstory is when I was running my last company, my co-founder was like this productivity bro. Mm-hmm. So inbox zero, responding to Notion comments in like 5 minutes, which is insane. Zapier, like Airtable, the type, right?
I try to be that so bad and I fail every time.
Yeah. And I was
I do like Apple Notes.
Yeah. I was exactly the same. I'm the Apple Notes guy, right? Like I'm just like, I'm never going to get to inbox zero. I don't want to set up all these Zapier integrations and all that stuff. And I always felt like I was in the wrong. Mm-hmm. I think most of us feel like, okay, man, I'm a bad person, or I'm bad at my job if I miss an email, or I don't get to inbox zero like everyone else does. It's like a point of envy, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I talked to the most successful people that I could find and asked them what their productivity routines are, how did they get to inbox zero? They basically all said like, just take a ton of Adderall. Take a ton of Adderall or get a VA, or basically don't get to inbox zero. So it's really, really crazy because we are telling ourselves as a society, you need to do this thing. Our tools are telling us to do this thing. So Superhuman is, I think, one of the most beautifully designed and one of the most successful email clients of the last decade. Is entirely focused on helping you process those emails faster to get to inbox zero. But I'd be incredibly surprised if more than 1, maybe 5%, most charitable, of users actually get to inbox zero consistently. Mm-hmm. So this is a problem. We've been gaslighting ourselves. We're saying, I'm so bad at my job if I don't get to inbox zero, but by the way, nobody does. And so that was kind of the first like aha moment. Anytime, I think in startups and stuff, anytime you notice this like cultural clash where it's like everybody thinks one thing, but it's actually the wrong thing, there's probably something there. And yeah, basically AI, GPT-4 had come out and I was like, okay, AI and email, that's going to be a thing for sure. Mm-hmm. Many people also had that thought. And having worked in like CRM and consumer products and all this stuff over the years, I kind of had this realization that email is actually this giant database. You know, if you think about it, if you ask anybody on the street to find a document for you, they're not going to search Dropbox. They're going to search email. Right?
That's true.
So
yeah.
I have yet to meet a person who says, oh, I'm going to search Dropbox before I search my email.
It's either email or Slack or like the primary form of communication. But I do feel like I never look at Dropbox or Drive or anything.
Yeah. So the idea is email is actually a larger document storage product than Dropbox, Drive, and all of them probably combined.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Email is probably a larger CRM than Salesforce. It's a larger social network than Facebook, you know, and we haven't really appreciated it for that. We haven't really,
because it's annoying.
It's annoying. Yeah, no. Well, because people have been building email clients the exact same way for the last 20 years. And it's like, all right, now let's just take a step back. We appreciate you, email. We know it's been hard for the last 20 years, but like we're gonna see you for what you are, which is the system of record for your life. And it's actually, what's interesting is it's also a workflow tool like for 100 different things. So like investors are doing their deal flow, their LP fundraising, their portfolio company management in it. Like my mom is managing the remodels of her house and reading some newsletters in it. You're doing shopping, like 80% of email is shopping, like travel management. And the idea is like, well, what if all these things were just like looked nicer and like the thing you're trying to do? Like what if your deliveries had a map where the packages were and like a one-click return button or something? You know what I mean?
I mean, that'd be the dream.
Wouldn't that be the dream? That's the vibe. That's what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah. And what are like the future plans with it? It sounds like you're not trying to be the new superhuman or the new anything. It sounds like you guys are just creating your own category.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess back to what I said a little bit earlier is in order to replace something, you have to be pretty similar to it. So we actually do have presets in the product that let you make it look and feel like Superhuman or look and feel like Gmail because we want people to be able to switch really easily. But the grand vision is something bigger than any of those things combined. It's like, you know, China has WeChat and the West has email. Email is already this kind of super app that everybody uses for everything. So the idea is, let's turn it into that.
And you said that you are more of like the creative kind of guy, right?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. And how
I'm wearing all black, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and you said you're like on the Apple Notes thing. You have your ideas probably in a million different places. For people who are co-founding companies with someone else, do you see a way in which that could be successful with two creatives, or is it kind of useful to have that like yin and yang situation?
Yeah. I think you need you need mutual respect and swim lanes.
Oh, swim lanes.
And actually three things: mutual respect, swim lanes, and a clear visionary leader. Single visionary leader, right? Everybody can give input. Everybody can have crossover like responsibilities, but like these are really important. So visionary leader, it really just has to be one person's vision for the company, because what'll happen is those visions are going to diverge. You're going to get in arguments, and you're going to have a co-founder breakup. It's just, that's what seems to happen over and over again. Last company, it was a little bit harder because we all had slightly different visions for where the company was going to go. Swim lanes, the other reason that company was a little hard was we all had overlapping abilities and responsibilities. So companies really work out when it's like the CTO and the CEO. CEO is doing all the customer stuff and the marketing and all that. CTO is doing the technical stuff. So there's not a lot of crossover, which means you can just stay in your lane and not think, okay, I should do this because this person isn't doing a good job. And then mutual respect. Something I realized is that in a relationship, you can't be with somebody you don't love. In business, you can't be with somebody you don't respect. It's the same phenomenon, exactly the same. Same feelings pop up. When you don't love somebody and you haven't told them yet, they know it. They can feel it.
They just feel it.
It's the same thing with respect. If you're working with somebody and you don't respect them, they can feel it.
Yeah.
And it causes all the friction. And so this is why they say fire fast, but it's also like, look, if you have an inkling that you don't really respect the work that somebody does, you have to part ways, because it's going to hurt the company, it's going to hurt you.
But if we apply the relationship perspective, is like, that's something that maybe you can try to fix or work towards.
Can you fall in love with like somebody like that?
I know, but sometimes love takes time.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes in relationships, this is probably getting way too deep into relationships, but in relationships, there was a quote I read, and it's like, you fall in love 100 times throughout your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be with different people, and sometimes it'll be with different versions of that same person over and over again.
Yeah.
And you're saying that doesn't apply professionally. Like, there's no, I guess, like, because people change. People change in a romantic sense, but people also change professionally. Like, sometimes people have like divine revelations and all these things about what they want to do, what they don't want to do.
Yeah.
So where is there a line that you can draw, or is it just like?
It's the same as love. It's like, there's one of my friends had this beautiful way of describing it, which is like, they're concentric circles of things you care about.
Yeah.
In the middle is your core values. So if I was super religious Jewish or something, I'm Jewish but not super religious, that would be a core value. And then if somebody wasn't Jewish, my partner wasn't Jewish, I couldn't love them, because this is a core value of mine. Like, it matters a lot to me. Just the same way in business, I can't respect you if you don't follow through on your promises all the time. That's a core value to me. Or maybe a core value is being responsive or working, on the weekends, right? Some people care about that more than others. And so the idea is that these other areas people can grow into, which is like, you are, you're an engineer and you produce bugs, but like, it's been improving. That can work. But if it's consistent and not improving, then you lose respect.
Because I feel like mistakes aren't necessarily a core value. I feel like in working, it's like, maybe at the core, your working style could be different. That would be like friction and disagreements. Yeah,
it's similar to love, because it's like, the actions don't matter so much as the feelings behind the actions. Right? So like, everybody's been in one of those couple fights where it's kind of basically about nothing or about some tiny thing.
Yeah. Or it's just like one fat misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're trying to say something, they're not understanding, and they're not listening to you, but you're not listening to them either. Yeah. And it's just like escalates.
But what's interesting is you're both just talking about your feelings about how the other person feels.
Yeah.
It's not about the little thing.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in kind of business, which is like, not responding to an email really quickly or missing something is about a feeling of lack of respect.
Wow. Interesting. And okay, I want to get more into like your future outlook on yourself. Oh. So fast forward, I feel like from what I know about you, you come off as very like peaceful and very introspective, which I think is really amazing. So if you had to fast forward in the future to like 45 years, 50 years, not on your deathbed, but like starting to
live to old. At least 200. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I know. This is so true. Yeah. What am I talking about? Okay, so fast forward 100 years. If you had to look back on your life, and what would you have to have done emotionally, spiritually, physically, career-wise, to have felt like, okay, I can die a happy person. I feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Big one. Yeah, I think something I really care about is contributing like the thing I have to the world. I went on this crazy, year-long travel around the world sabbatical. And the idea was to do a bunch of creation, like make music, do a lot of writing. Did it a little bit in the beginning, but it was mostly just like, let's go travel around India, or let's go like see this thing, or Oktoberfest or whatever. A lot of consumptive stuff. And it was like really not a good experience. I wound up being like depressed by the end of it because I was not creating. I was not making things.
Oh, I've heard so many people say great things about sabbaticals. Really? I think you're the first person I've heard that said, like, it's not a good thing. But maybe that's because you didn't, like, fulfill its purpose in your mind. Does that make sense?
Well, it may be a me thing. It was definitely a me thing. It's that I came out of that and being like, I need to be creating things. I need to be putting things into the world. And so for me, that's like ideas. So like, I love talking about these big galaxy brain topics like Sprezzatura and stuff like that. Like maybe one day I'll write a book. Maybe I'll write a blog post, at least a couple tweets. I like making music. I have music on Spotify and all that stuff. And it's always something that I've thought about, okay, I'm gonna come back to this and like, you know, nurture this artistic side a little bit more. Definitely, obviously this company is my life's work right now. Obviously having a family and falling in love, all that stuff. Yeah, I think also just enjoying the ride. It's kind of a crazy time to be alive.
Yeah, I feel like it is.
It's really crazy.
It's like a peaceful but chaotic time. And I think I was talking about this with my parents. They were like, yeah, we've never lived through a world war. Like you've never experienced, like you're probably never going to get deployed in your life. Well, I mean, because I'm a girl, but also, you know, like my brothers won't either.
We deploy girls, don't we?
No, in war, men go first.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And then women.
All right. Got it.
I would never sign up for the military.
I'll be the IT guy.
But, you know, I just think like, yeah, it is a very, very interesting time to be alive. Okay. My last question to you was, out of all the advice that you've received throughout your life from someone that you've really respected or any of your role models or bosses or leaders, what's one piece of advice that you could give everyone that everyone should follow? Good
idea. Good question.
Universal.
It's a shame because I can't remember who told me this, but I think I learned it at a retreat or something like that.
Okay.
It's not so much advice, but a thought experiment.
Okay. Because
I think a lot of people actually, so I've done like these silent meditation retreats.
I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I've heard. I have so many thoughts on that. I have so many questions, but continue.
It was an amazing experience. But one of the things you really internalize through the teachings as well as the actual meditation is this idea of the present. And the thing that they say is that all of human misery comes from not being present, thinking about the future. What could happen?
I'm so guilty of that.
Really? We're all guilty of that. I'm so guilty.
It's so bad. Like everyone in my life always tells me, Claire, you have to be more present. Yeah. You're so busy, like spiraling a million years into the future about a million different scenarios that could never happen. Like you're going to die before the age of 60 because you're so stressed about these things. Yep. But continue.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thinking about the future, thinking about, like I want to do this, I want to do that. You know, a lot of the people who have these like crazy like life plans and personal development programs and stuff are like the least happy people.
Yes.
Right? And then it's people who are thinking about the past, like, I'm so nostalgic for childhood. I like miss those days, or like, I shouldn't have done this, or like whatever. If you forget the past and the future, you're going to be so much happier in the present. This is why, like, I think Trump said a lot of stupid stuff, but one thing that I thought was really brilliant that not a lot of people clued in on, he said something like, like I've never been depressed. And he's like, you know what the cure for depression is? Get a job. And why? Because most jobs will force you to be present, at least when you're doing the job. They force you to not be thinking about this, not be thinking about that, to be just like in the zone. This is why also working out helps you out of depression, like all these different things. That as long as it's keeping you present, you are going to be in a much better mental state. So one of the few exercises that I think helps you kind of snap out of like future anxiety is like this 5-year exercise. So 5-year exercise is basically imagine yourself 5 years ago. Put yourself in your shoes 5 years ago. And then try to think about what was super concerning or worrisome. What did you have anxiety about, happening in the future about 5 years ago? What did you really want to be able to do in your life but 5 years ago. And then fast forward to today, are those anxieties still there? Are those worries still there? Most of the time it's no. Did you do any of the things that you wanted to do? Most of the time it's yes, or a lot of them. And so then the exercise now is like, cool. What are you worried about now? What do you want to do in the future? What are your goals? Project yourself in the future. Take a guess what that person in the future is going to say if they're doing that exercise 5 years, that 5-year exercise then. So that basically dispels the anxiety around, am I going to be able to get myself out of this or achieve the potential that I want, right? And it allows you to be more focused on the present.
I'm going to try that.
It works. It works.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It was really, really great to have you. And we'll have you back on in the future to discuss more.
Let's do it.
Zen things.
Namaste.
Namaste.